technically speaking, fabrics brought me so much comfort, and it gave me a sense of um, like security, I would say, as a kid. Like, specifically, like, say, the beanpole, where I would dip it on my face and I would really feel safe and I would fall asleep. And I think that small gesture developed into a broader what's the exploration and into, like, the bigger blankets in my room, and I would start draping, or not necessarily even on my body, but like creating forts, which you would do as a kid, or like almost like a playhouse of sorts, and find places to tie it somewhere. um, and I think I never realized that that was something that I would be pursuing professionally, or I would say like a pursuing period in life. But as I grew up, I discovered that there are places or spaces that provided like these sort of feeling. It's more of a familiar feeling, like either seeing it in stores or museums or installations, even like public, like say the canopies that you would see in public places, or tarpaulins here in the Philippines. So I realized that people are doing something about it. And that's where I started looking into, I guess, doing industrial design when I was in high school. And then realizing that more than anything, it's the relationship with clothes that I valued, or that I wanted to investigate further. So yeah, fortunately, I was able to do menswear for my degree, and um, that's where it became more of a full realization that it always loops back into, it's so important for me to know or to have a relationship with the textile I'm working on, because it makes or break what the garment is. Um, so I've become very much involved in terms of producing these textiles now that we operate a brand. Right. Well, the brand is a namesake label called Cruz, and it is now identified as a Filipino contemporary design brand that represents, cultural heritage of being Filipino, but at the same time mirroring the times of how fashion or clothes are approached, um, from the context of being Filipino, not just limited by being in the Philippines, I would say, but our sensibilities and our values as Filipino. And the brand started um, as more of a visual autobiography of, like, say, clothes and ideas that I would personally would always question. And given the opportunity that I could realize these clothes when I was in a educational format of being in university, um, that's where I started realizing that it's the kind of like clothes that I would love to wear, or wishful thinking that I would want to have. And slowly it going looping back to what I said, it slowly became a brand. And so when saying from being a designer to being a brand, it's also committing in terms of designing how I want to operate this brand, being based here in the Philippines or in Manila, and actually modeling a specific way of how clothes should be created or concept should be approached, or even on a retail or say commercial environment, how should it be presented. Again, it all started from when I was really young. It's not an overnight process, I think, because I got myself involved in the industry quite early on. I was in mid of my high school, like I was 14, and it was just all out of curiosity and because I interned for so many placements from like no job was too small for me. I was a stylist, a show production assistant, to down to even um I think at one point like making props as well, because I like the process of creation, and it became more and more highlighted. I think it was more of like, okay, what kind of creation or creating or process of creating do I really like? And again, it kind of ties back with the fabric. And I think slowly, because I identified with that, so I gravitated probably working with brands or houses that really prize themselves to developing a lot of their own textile or innovating their own ways of fabric. And industrially speaking, that's how you actually probably dip your toes into knowing these people or how it goes, the ABCs, before the Z. And that's where I was like, oh, maybe I can realize some of these things, especially when it comes to denim and to jersey. And it was very experimental, coming in, asking if they can do it, some things that they've never done, but sure, we can give it a go given the resources are available. And from there, it's still, I would believe, a trial and error, but less and less error as we go down the line. And it's more about refinement. I think we're at the cusp about just making things in a more refined manner. So I think that from a fabric perspective, and also because as a vertical setup, like an industry for us, I mean, not industry, but like a company for us, we also take pride in terms of, cultivating our own culture of how we create or design clothes, and how we approach in terms of like, um, how we want to create a piece of like a shirt or denim. And there's a lot of exchanges and process down to even producing it, like industrializing these designs into a product. And hopefully slowly again this year that we can go back into, you know, um, taking people in physically and presenting it the way we would want it to be presented in a tactile manner to everyone. Um, yeah. So this again focuses a lot on the denim and the PK. It wasn't intentional that, oh, because they're the ones that we really developed in the Philippines. It was more, this is what we have and this is what we deal with. Um, and it's something that began during the time of, the beginning of the pandemic during 2020. And slowly we just really didn't have a purpose for the quilts that we were making, but it was more about the idea or the feeling that it gave to us, that it was something that we were familiar with and we knew how we would put it together. It was also the idea of working in isolation or being independent, but also coming together and seeing the uniformity of how things, how that brief as a collective, or even my thoughts were or even personally would be interpreted by myself and say my team. And it's interesting how there would be disparities and also similarities, and it's something that we kept up doing, until as of the current time. And slowly we're finding ourselves finding utility in them. It's funny how utility was never a priority. It was refreshing also because making clothes, you really think of it how it should be worn. But in this manner, because we just really focus on the textile and creating a textile, we were just thinking of how we want it to feel on our hands, or how we would want it to look like, or how we would want it to weigh like. And slowly the utility comes into, like from covering specific pieces in our studio to using it as drapes to using it as something, but it became an integral part of the identity of our workspace. And it's almost, as I was saying, it's like cutlery on a table. Like it feels like naked now without it. Like our studio feels naked. Like, it's like it has become a tool for us to function. Literally a derivative of a sampaguita, which we develop in terms of a print, and we we just slowly tried to think like, I think it was a template, and the composition of colors was more of the variety there. The constant was the template, and then we were like, what if we do it in this color? I think it's also for us swatching creatively different colorways that goes with those typical fabrics that we would have. And it's almost seeing that, oh, we didn't expect these colors could go together. So it's again like part of that process of trial and error of seeing like what colors we like and don't. But it wasn't controlled at any way of like, oh, we should use this color. It was very whatever we felt like at that point. And then we were using it. Maybe there are times we were using one solid color. There were times we were using like, multiple colors in one. Um, yes, and the Sampaguita, I guess, came from it's a personal obsession, I guess, of mine. It was something that I would have or grow up with as a kid. It's either it was in the car or at home or in our garden. Yeah. I think it's honest. If anything, it's quite honest, and it's very straightforward, I would say. Um, and given this is like the first ever for me to do an install, the most important feeling for me overall that I'm valuing this year is lightness. And I don't want to always overthink certain things. I guess that's me coming realizing from, embracing again, designing more and more of a company for the brand. But given that this is an opportunity to express something more creatively, or I would say non-committal in terms of being too strategic or being too boxed. So it was really nice to approach it in a very honest and raw way of presenting it. Like, I think I'm able to present the context without an entire purpose. And I feel like that's something that is so rare for me because it's always I'm constantly questioned with a purpose. Oh, what is this for? What is that for? Like going back to making clothes, it has to be either a t-shirt, it has to be a jacket, it has to be pants, it has to be skirt. But I love the fact that, it could be hanged in that way. And in a sense that looping back to what I do, I actually find hanging personally, in that way, in the clothesline, very relaxing. Because also for me, it's an opportunity for the textiles or the clothes to rest. Or for it, whatever it has gone through in the past 2 years, it's the opportunity for it to just to become and to be presented in that sense. Because I've also toyed around, maybe framing them, putting them behind the glass, or I don't know, stretching. But then I feel like, parang it went through so much extraneous um, processes that for me, the whole landing format is relaxed. It really, as me with clothes, right, Tina, it's just I don't even have we don't have a ideal client or an ideal muse. We focus on, I mean, if it's a garment, we want a really good neckline, a good armhole, the right shape. And sometimes it sits so differently. And most of the times it sits just so differently, and we're constantly amazed. And same goes with this, that we were just, you know, this is a textile. This is something that we didn't even have intended utility for it. But we slowly found utilities for it within our space. And going out there and putting it within your space, this space in Art Informal, it's a new chance for these textiles to, live a different life after it being hanged, and I think that's really, yeah, I don't want it to be something na, it's just one way. And you're very right. Like if they want to frame it, frame it. If they want to turn it into a, part of their upholstery, they might. If they want to, I don't know, create, I could only think so much because everyone's brain are so different.